Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, or wherever you're joining from. Hello to everyone. Welcome to the Open Policy Meeting 1 at APNIC 53. Just a few notes. If you want to ask a question, please type it in the chat box with the words question, colon, or raise your hand and we will let you to speak. Also, please mindful of the code of conduct, which is published on the conference website as well as popped in the chat box. Now, you can also ask any other questions not related to the presentations, any technical issues you're having or anything else related to the conference in the chat box or email to conference@apnic.net and we will get back to you as soon as we can. With that, let's start the session. I'm handing over to the policy SIG chairs and co-chairs. Bertrand, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunny. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day to all of you. I would like to welcome you to this APNIC 53 online open policy meeting. Since the last meeting, the meeting has been very quiet, but on the bright side, we had a very good policy proposal webinar on Thursday, the 17th. So before giving the mic to my co-chairs, I would like a few reminders. Consensus is a general agreement taking into consideration comments on the mailing list and on the policy meeting. It is not a vote. For the consensus gauging for this online meeting, we will use Confer and Zoom poll. Just choose the one you want to use. With that being said, I will now give the mic to Jing, who will go in more details on all of this in the SIG administration. Jing.
Thanks, Bertrand. Let me share the screen. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Policy SIG. I will present the Policy SIG administration. The Policy SIG chair is Bertrand. The co-chair is me, Jinghen, and Shara. The Policy SIG chapter is to develop the policies related to the management and the use of internet number resources within AP region. These include policies for resource allocation, recovery, and the transfer, and for resource registration within WHOIS reverse DNS, APRICOT, and the related services. Proposal 137 IPv6 assignment for association members did not reach consensus at APNIC 52 OPN and sent back to the authors and the community for discussion. Because lack of interest on the mailing list and the new version not received by the submission deadline for this OPN, chairs decided to abandon this proposal. Before the official OPN meeting today, there was a policy proposal webinar on February 17th for authors to share and read out proposals for community feedback and the comments. There were 19 members of community join the webinar and received overwhelming response and participation. We get strong interest from community to organize this webinar in the future. Agenda of today's Open Policy Meeting 1 includes a chair welcome remark from Bertrand and the SIG administration report by me, and Sunny will present the policy implementation report. In the following, the APRICOT will present the new version of Proposal 141. This new version of proposal is submitted late before the deadline, so the proposal will not get through the process of consensus. It's an opportunity to get some feedback and encourage further discussion on the mailing list. The last presentation in this session is what happened with addresses in 2021 by Jeff Houston. After 15 minutes break, we will have open policy meeting 2. In the beginning, there still has a SIG administration presented by our new co-chair, Shara. Before the policy proposal discussion, Sunny will present the policy analysis from the secretarial point of view. Then we will have 3 new policy proposals discussion, proposal 142, 143, and 144. Steps to policy implementation include some stage and steps, such as policy proposal need be submitted and have mailing list discussion before open policy meeting. The policy proposal then present and discuss for consensus at policy SIG and at a member meeting. After consensus has been reached, policy proposal enter comment period. After EC endorsement and the editorial comments period, the APNIC secretariat will implement the policy proposal. Consensus means the general agreement take into consideration comments on the mailing list and at the open policy meeting. Community could have objection for the proposal, minor objection and the major objection. If you have major objections, please express your reason. In the discussion of the policy proposal, please be mindful of the code of conduct. About the gaining consensus, Chair will consider mailing list discussion and the discussion at the open policy meeting. We will use both Zoom poll and confirm this time for the preference in the proposal feedback. ICANN and the PTI secretarial staff do not participate in the consensus. All registered conference attendees can access confirm without creating a separate confirm account. The URL of confirm is confirm.apnic.net. This slide shows some related URL for your reference. Thank you. It's time back to Bertrand. And let me start the share. If there is no other question, maybe we can go to the next presentation by Sunny about the policy implementation report.
Thank you, Ching Heng. Yeah, may I start, please? Hope you can see my slides.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Good.
So I'll be giving, this is my first presentation for this policy meeting, the implementation report from APNIC 52 proposals. So we had few proposals discussed and reached consensus at APNIC 52. And this is one of it, Prop 135 documentation. This proposal implemented on 6th of December 2021. We simplified the documentation, policy documentation. We removed the duplication as it suggested. And also we removed the sections, duplicate sections, and merged the content of both the sections into one section for requesting resources and providing documentation. So this proposal is implemented on 6th of December. The next one was 136, registration requirements. Again, this one is also a string from 3 sections to 1 section. It's all editorial changes, but because it was a proposal, we did it in the PDP process. And the individual sections are combined to 1 section for the registration requirements. Restricting ASID in ROA, this was reached consensus as a guideline, and we have implemented the guideline on the same date as we implemented the other proposals on 6th of December 2021, and we informed the community about these guidelines as well. Now, these guidelines is published on the website in the guidelines section, and there's also a URL in this presentation. If you would like to visit these guidelines and have a look at it, please go through that one. The SOR not required was proposed at APNIC 52, and this policy is now deprecated. So the LIRs don't have to put in a request for a second opinion request from APNIC when they are delegating resources to their downstream ISPs or to the customers. This policy is now deprecated and it's removed from the policy document on 6th of December 2021. We have clear definitions for the end site and end user as per the Prop 140 update end site definition. This was a simple change as well. Now we have clear definition in the document, so there's no confusion between IPv4 and IPv6 delegations. And again, this was implemented on 6th of December 2021 as well. So with those implementation of those policy proposals, the current document version policy internet number resources policies document version is 127.0110 and 090 is deprecated or absoluted. So you can find the links for the current policy document as well as the archives, what's changed from 090 to 010. You can look at the archives as well. Now, I'd like to just take an opportunity here to thank all the proposal authors and the community members, you all, and the SIG chairs as well, for your active contribution and participation in the APNIC policy development process, and continuously, as always, continuously improving and suggesting new policies that works well for this community. So thank you all. Thank you very much for putting forward your proposals and also for joining the discussions and putting forward your comments. Thank you so much. Thanks, Chase.
Thanks, Sunny. And is there any question or comments for Sunny's presentation? If there is no, you have any comment, you can open your mic or you type your questions in the room chat. If there is no comment or question, we may go to the next presentation. Maybe we need, because after we don't see after here, and we maybe go to the Jeff first. Jeff, you are ready for the presentation?
Certainly am. Yes.
Okay, so thanks, Jeff, and it's your time.
Okay, thank you. I will share my screen and share and have a look at some of this. Part of the issue around address policy is trying to understand its effects and outcomes. And that's something that I've been doing now for many years in terms of looking at the state of addresses in the internet as a whole. What's been the result of all these various policies and procedures? How well is the internet doing? Is it actually coping? Are the right things happening, whatever the right things may be? So in a quick sort of tour of the table, I'll go around V4 and then V6 and have a look at what's been happening. The first of these is the amount of addresses that the RIRs have allocated over the last 10 years. Now, it's always difficult to actually do this particular graph. And you kind of think, well, that should be simple, shouldn't it? And the answer is no, because the RIRs actually have subtly different practices. In ARIN, for example, a transfer of addresses between two holders is actually treated as a return to registry and an allocation. Whereas in the other RIRs, and APNIC in particular, it's treated as an off-registry transfer. It's not a new allocation, it's simply a change of holder of an existing allocation. So there's a fair deal of sort of trying to sift out this data to actually get hold of what actually happened with allocations. But one thing is very, very clear. In 2010, the RIR system overall allocated 250 million addresses, which is a lot, out of 4 billion in the total pool. APNIC ran out, Wright ran out, ARIN ran out, LACNIC ran out, APRICOT's in the final stages. And over the years, the amount of addresses that have been allocated has, of course, dropped down. That's not a surprise. This is because those last /8 policies that have been implemented and the husbanding of these residual pools that has happened over the previous years actually meant that there have been many allocations that have continued to happen over the last 10 years. It's just that the amount of addresses being allocated is down to that minimal size, where most of these allocations actually sit in the /24 area. I was actually looking for evidence of the pandemic and lockdown, and Europe, the RIPE NCC allocated a much lower volume of allocations in 2020. 2019, it did a massive number. 2020, a lot slower, and climbing again in 2021. For APNIC, no change. For ARIN, no change. And so it was really only the RIPE NCC where you saw a notable impact, I believe, from the pandemic on the number of allocations. I've also been tracking transfers because everyone actually now, all the RIRs, record transfers in their transfer log. And again, this is one of these odd things. For some reason, the community served by the RIPE NCC is not just enthusiastic, it's over the top. The amount of transfers just keeps on getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And there are, 5,700 recorded in 2022, which if you compare it to the other RIRs, APNIC 786, ARIN 150, that's massive. And I actually have no idea why this is going on. And if there's someone from the RIPE NCC who's awake and listening, maybe that might like to explain these massive numbers. The other thing to note is that the RIRs actually have no way of recording leasing. And so we are aware, and certainly evident, that there is a fair deal of leasing where the holding records don't change, but the holder is changing because of the lease. These tables don't reflect any form of leasing activity. And it's very hard to tell in some ways what extent leasing is going on and to what extent it's, not. It's very difficult to measure. Let me just advance the page. Thank you. I have actually been looking, though, in our registries of transfers, who's exporting addresses and who's importing. And in the United States, which has a strong legacy pool, which is being mined for some time, and this reflects the period 2015 to 2021, the end of last year, the United States, some 20 million addresses are listed in the transfer registries. Oddly enough, Australia is actually quite high. I didn't realize that pool was so big, but I think if you look behind the APNIC handling of the, it wasn't quite a /8 from the Japanese community across into the APNIC Foundation, I think you'll see effectively a shift in the country to Australia that then got registered as a transfer. And that transfer occurred predominantly through the sale of those addresses to Chinese entities, some of which, a fair few of which, had their registered ownership in Singapore. And so Singapore has been used by a number of these larger entities that have a strong presence in China as their corporate location, which is why Singapore ranks high on the import stakes. So that APNIC or at least APNIC Foundation sale across of those that block of addresses last year is actually the top of the bilateral trade of 8.6 million. And similarly, though, with movements towards Chinese entities, USA to Singapore of 5.5 million is also there. But that's that kind of bilateral trade where you actually see a certain amount of movement. This does not reflect movements within the ripe NCC area clearly. There's lots and lots and lots of very, very small transfers happening there, which don't actually reflect as a large pool of addresses. Address pricing is not our problem. We don't run the transfer markets. We don't host the transfer markets. We register the outcomes of transfer markets. We are by no means any form of regulator, overseer, whatever of the transfer markets, but we are keenly interested in them, as are you. And this is pricing data. There are a number of sources, a number of the brokers do publish. Last year I used IPv4.global. No, last year I used someone else. This year I have used IPv4.global, Hilco Streambank. The data is much the same. Fascinating. Up until the start of 2021, the price was phenomenally stable and highly grouped. It's color-coded by size. And over the previous 2 years, it was steady at between $20, $23 per V4 address, almost irrespective of what size allocation was being traded. That had risen over 4 odd years, 2015 right up until 2019, slowly, but then was stable. Last year went nuts. It rose very, very quickly to $40. And then this spread across the second half of the year, where some transfers were happening at 40, some at 60, which actually shows a lack of clear market information. People weren't telling each other what was going on. Pricing signals got confused and extremely high. The early data from 2022 suggests that's now coalescing at around $50 an address, but nevertheless, that has been quite a shock to many in sort of this activity as to how quickly that rose, with no real reason as to why. But as I point out again, transfers are not under the, if you will, aegis or under the purview of the RIRs. We are not in the RIR system any form of market regulator. We are merely observing what is happening on those markets. That's it. I've been looking too in the transfer logs to find out when these transfers were originally allocated, because I was kind of interested to see if we were mining the old legacy blocks or we were transferring as soon as we received them. And so when a transfer happens, I look back through the registry data to find how many years before the transfer did the original allocation happen. And what is clear is that within 2 years, and the big solid blue line is what happened in 2021, transfers start to happen. And this is in the percentage of all addresses transferred that year. So around 7% got transferred exactly after 2 years. Another big point happens just a little after 5 years of tenure, where around another 8% of addresses are immediately flipped. So to what extent is minimum tenure and flipping going on? Well, around 15% of all addresses last year were actually doing that. That for whatever reason, the addresses were being held from the minimal period after allocation and then immediately put on the market. The bulk of the market space is between the 10 and 20 year mark. So these are addresses where I think the business profile has changed from the holder and stuff is moving. The amount of very old addresses, what I would call legacy, older than 30 years, last year, that Japanese block certainly changed the figures a lot. 2021 is more typical. Around 12% of addresses are extremely old legacy blocks. That is getting smaller over time each year because we've mined most of the legacy. There's very little left. This is interesting where I don't look at the address size, but just simply say transaction. Of all the transactions, how many happened with a minimum tenure of just over 2 years? Wow, 30%. How many over 5 years? Well, there's that next peak of around another 10%. Now, if you put that together with the fact that most of the transfers have actually been registered in the RIPE NCC region, there is something about the minimum holding tenure in the RIPE NCC that I just don't understand. But there's an awful lot of flipping going on with minimum tenure, and it's predominantly in that part of the world, not in other regions. Maybe I should do this data per RIR, but this is the total for the whole system. The other thing about this is to what extent are the reserve pools draining? Aaron, from 6 million down to a little over 5, slowly but surely. APNIC, 4.5 million now, just a little under 2 million. So 2.5 million addresses were released from APNIC from the reserve pool. The RIPE NCC, steady. LACNIC, drained from a little over 1 to around 200,000 addresses. The anomalous one is APRICOT, which moved from 2 million addresses up to 4 million across last year, with a couple of large increases as addresses were added to their reserved pools. The unadvertised addresses in the V4 space, that's the last 20 years, slowly rising. Then all of a sudden, the US Department of Defense started advertising its originally allocated /8s. Massive change. And you can see it actually as it happened through the year with bursts in February, in May, and in September. The ratio of advertised to unadvertised now dropped to an all-time low. 80% of all addresses allocated out there are now visible in the routing table, and only 20% are unadvertised. That's the pool movements for the year. If we started the year at 0, the advertised rate rose by up to 210 million, predominantly due to the US DoD, which advertised previously unadvertised addresses. And what we saw was 24 million coming out of allocations one way or another. Who's got addresses? Well, America's got 44% of all allocated addresses with 1.6 billion. And you can read this as well as I can, and probably far faster. Per capita is interesting. And there's this block in the Seychelles, which is now a global high of 73.7 addresses notionally per resident of the Seychelles. If you look at the reality, though, those addresses are indeed everywhere. But what I'm using there is the country of nominal registration of the address holder in the RIR registry system, which in the case of the Seychelles does not reflect reality within the Seychelles itself. I suspect that maybe Liechtenstein might be another holding place, but I'm not sure about tax havens. Other people are better at that than me. IPv6. Well, COVID. We were doing around 7,000 a year in 2019, and then everything just stopped. Where did it stop? Well, it stopped in the RIPE NCC. The other RIRs are relatively consistent, but that massive amount of V6 allocation activity in Europe and the Middle East, the area covered by the RIPE NCC, halved in 2020 and is still only recovering in 2021. But interestingly, Latin America, the LACNIC numbers, halved in 2021 from 2020. The allocation volumes, I've compared V4 and V6 in terms of number of allocations, not the size, just the number. And little by little, the activity out of the RIRs and allocations is actually getting close to V4, finally. Now, of course, the V4 addresses and lots of 24s, the V6s are somewhat different. The addresses allocated in V6 is, again, pretty typical. You can see a COVID impact, and the RIPE NCC in orange is very visible in that decline in V6 address allocations. Where did they go? It's an interesting table over the years, and you can read that better than I, but the USA is still quite a seething sort of bundle of activity. And what's missing across most of these in terms of the number of allocations that I would have expected is actually China and India, highly populous, and one of the densest V6 pools in the globe. But nevertheless, the new allocations in 21, not so high. Interesting. I'm not sure I have an explanation on that. Let's look at the totals. The largest address pools are in China, and then USA is very, very close. And again, you can read this as well as I can in that table of the top 25. This stuff is all online, and I've written it up in my blog if you want to look at it in more detail later. IPv6, advertised versus unadvertised. V6 has always had a much, much higher pool of unadvertised addresses. So 60% of the allocated V6 pool is not visible in the routing tables. Only 40% is visible, which is completely the opposite of where V4 was. V6 use, as we know, is around 30%, and it's predominantly India. India is out front, by and large, this sort of hotspot of population of V6 users, eclipsing every other economy on the planet. The other areas of activity are, of course, in Europe, Brazil, and the US, and other spaces, particularly Africa, Eastern Europe, and everywhere in South America other than Brazil are still basically red. There's much more work to go. And these are the resources that I've used to set up this report. And as I said, you will find this on the APNIC blog, and you'll also find this on my website at potteroo.net for more detail. I've taken up 20 minutes here, and hopefully AFTAB has now managed to get online. But if there are any questions, I will cheerfully, very quickly handle them if there are. Otherwise, thank you for your time and attention.
Thanks, Jeff. It's very valuable and interesting presentation. I think you are interested in earning money. You were interested in Jeff's analysis. Jeff, do you have any feedback for Jeff, for Jody's comment in the chat room?
Well, you know, this whole area of mergers and acquisitions and the way various RIRs handle the bookkeeping, you know, companies buy companies. And we've always had, long before a formal transfer policy, a merger and acquisition policy that allowed, when I bought a company that had addresses, I could coalesce their holdings. The transfer logs are meant to discriminate and make a difference between those kinds of activities. But each of the secretariats do this differently. And when you try and take these 5 logs and mash them together to produce a coherent whole, then there are a certain amount of assumptions going on. Now, I have tried to sift out the mergers and acquisitions that are listed as such, but in the RIPE NCC region, there's a lot left. So, Geordie, it may well still be what you call M&As, and that could well be true, but the bookkeeping and the logging doesn't make that clear. So I just had to assume, no other alternative, to actually list it as a transfer like all the others.
Okay, thanks. Jeff, may I have a question? Do you think that the IPv4 transfer be able to satisfy the requirement of most ISPs in this status?
Well, clearly not.
Oh.
Not. Price is a reflection of balancing supply and demand. So when the price rises, as it did this year, from a little over $20 to upwards of $60, obviously there were more buyers than sellers. Obviously, there were more people wanting addresses than there were addresses to be had. The price rises because, in economics terms, it's a scarcity premium. But the issue is it's now stabilized at that price. Now, I find that strange. Maybe that higher price has flushed out more addresses, and that folk who were saying, well, I won't sell until it gets to $50 have decided to sell, and all of a sudden there's more supply. It is a very interesting open market, and the price does reflect that equilibration between supply and demand. It also reflects, I think, that NATs are just the reality of today, and that most of the world is now chugging along in NATs. What's going on is that enterprise and servers have a very big need for native addresses. Client-based networks decreasingly have a need for native addresses and just simply turn up the pressure on NATs to actually service their customer load. So the market segments between retail large-scale deployments for customers, you know, the mass market, and enterprise markets, which are declining, oddly enough. They're getting smaller because of cloud, and the service market, the Amazons, the Googles, the Microsofts of this world, Facebook, which still have quite a vibrant demand for v4 addresses.
Yeah. So we many concerned when the price will be stable or most.
It will never be stable. I think that's
stable.
one thing I think we can predict with absolute certainty. The whole aim of this transition is to get to the point where everyone is supporting dual stack, or at least everyone who counts. Because once we get to the fact that everyone who matters does V6, there is no point running any residual V4. And the folk that only have V4 are then left stranded, but because they don't count, they will be left stranded. The price will collapse. It will collapse to zero. There is no doubt. There is no lingering aftermarket. Like DECnet addresses, do you remember them? Worthless. AppleTalk addresses, worthless. This will collapse. It's obvious. But the whole issue is, as usual, how high will it get? The concern that we all have, I think, is that we are looking at the formation of a bubble where the folk who are buying are no longer genuine buyers, but we get pressure from speculators who are buying on the anticipation of yet higher pricing, which will cause artificial scarcities, which will further disrupt this industry. We have tried very, very hard in RIR policies to qualify recipients of transfers with some form of demonstrated need to try and remove that speculative pressure. But as I said, when the price doubles of any commodity, folk look at it and go, can I make money? And at that point, speculative pressure enters the room.
Okay, it's good. Yeah. So may I have another question? So we can see your analysis. IPv6 allocation not much as past few years. Does this mean the IPv6 implementation not fast as past few years?
I think when we sent everyone home, and in particular in Europe and America, the large-scale lockdowns had a massive impact on most folks' engineering plans. And I think most of the time it was, let's just keep doing what we're doing. Let's not change until we can figure out, when this pandemic is over. And for most folk who are actually doing okay on NATs, V6 is not urgent. V6 is simply what we need to do at some point, and it was deferrable. And so for 2 years, it was deferred. And, that really is an indication that there is no sense of urgency within the industry at large to complete this transition. We don't feel that we have to get it done by any particular date, and therefore any date's as good as any other. And that sort of the COVID pandemic managed to stall the industry is about the clearest signal you could possibly get that folk don't regard the V6 transition as something with a deadline. They're quite happy to defer it if there are other external factors around here that actually impact upon their decision to deploy.
Yeah, it's a good point. So I have some question in the chat room. What do you believe could be the impact of reducing the IPv4 local FIP look back to 127.0.0.0?
Oh, okay.
16.2.
Absolutely none. The issue is that in some ways, the overhang of demand versus supply is so high that NATs are required. Absolutely. There's just, we can't go back to native addressing in V4. That boat, sailed away 10 years ago and it's never coming back. That's gone. Now, all we're talking about now is how much NAT pressure is out there, and will a small amount of addresses, a few million, make any difference in the NAT architecture for large-scale service providers? Now, it's unlikely. Why? Because when you look at a NAT-based architecture, you don't have 32 bits of address space. You actually have 32 bits plus 16 bits of source port, 48 bits, Plus you have an extra 4 bits or maybe 5 bits of time sharing, because you have the address for a while, I have an address for a while. We're sharing. And that actually gives you the ability to share one address plus port over more than one person. And as long as sessions are short, and sessions are short because this is a fast network, we can get up to 4 bits of time sharing out of this. So we're dealing with around 52 bits of address space. That's huge. Changing 127.16 and a few other blocks at the top of the space, the amount of effort to make that work and the dubious assumptions that it will work versus the absolutely tiny impact that would make on the NAT architecture says the effort versus the return don't match. Everyone has to do a lot of work, everybody, to make these addresses actually work for a tiny amount of space to be released into the NAT pools. And it's kind of, well, I don't see the world rapidly escalating to make this happen. I just don't. So I don't think it's going to make any impact.
Okay, it's good. Thanks, Cohen's questions.
Well, it's not into him in particular in that area.
Well,
These proposals have been around since 2010. And I co-authored, I think, with Paul Wilson, one of them, that actually explored some of these efforts. Part of the issue is, and at the time the argument was, the amount of resource we have in this world is finite. There's not an infinite pool of trained engineers that all of us are acutely aware of. Where should we spend our time to actually do the maximal benefit for the greatest number? And at the time, the judgment was, yes, we could go and make this work. It would be a lot of effort. Or we could make V6 work better. And at the time, we thought, really, the effort is better invested in V6. I think that was the wise decision then. And I actually think at this point, it's still the right decision. Certainly, the transition is taking way longer than we thought. The urgency isn't there. NATs work better than we ever believed possible. This is true. But NATs are not an infinite forever solution. They're not. And at some point, we really do have to get this done. And trying to make the zombie half-life of V4 last for a few more months doesn't serve anybody's interest, really. We need some kind of sense of collective pressure to get this moved through, and salvaging scraps of difficult to use V4 address space is, I think, a distortion and a perversion of effort. Personal opinion, Brad, straight up across the top of that, because that's nothing to do. You guys are the address policy people. But my point is, indeed, looking at this as a researcher and as an observer, certainly, if we've only got finite effort, where do we put it is actually an interesting question. We're taking a long time on this, and I now notice APRICOT is in the participant list, so I'm happy to stop at this point if you are.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for your presentation. Very wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we go to the next presentation by FTAB. FTAB, get ready. You can share your screen.
Thank you, Cheng Hang.
Yeah.
Yes, I am ready.
Okay, it's your time.
Only if I was watching the clock last time, then yes. This time I am. All right, so because I have, sometimes even 2 screens doesn't make any sense anymore. But anyway, I hope you can see my right screen or not.
No.
No.
It's black.
What happened to my front page?
There it is.
Oh, here it is. So it blanked out for some reason. But anyway, I'm back. And now I don't see you, so just imagine that I can see you. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for the chairs to giving me the opportunity, because I submitted the updated deck a bit late. So here I am, just taking as little time as possible to give you an overview of what Prop 141 is trying to achieve. Well, it is trying to give you more IPv4 addresses. And why we are trying to give you more IPv4 addresses? Because we do have some available addresses with APNIC. While Jeff shared that the price in the open market is going up considerably, and we are sitting on a pile of V4. Well, it is for the newcomers for sure. This is what we fought for in the previously. I mean, I was one of the co-author of the /23 proposal, but I think what we are doing is we are just keeping IPv4 for a very long time, just to make sure that everybody get on with V6. Even if we go ahead with this policy, me and Simon, who's the co-author, strongly believe that we will still give enough time to those who will join us, those operators who will join us at the later end, still can join with the V4 and V6. So we have around, it was 2 weeks, a week ago, it was like 14,774/24s in the available pool and 7,000 something in the reserve pool. If you combine them together, it's around more than 20,000 V4 pools available. If APNIC continues to delegate IPv4 with the size of /23, the average growth rate of around 145 /23s per month, the pool will exhaust around 2027 mid-year or at the end of the year. That is a rough calculation. If Jeff is here, he can probably give you a really accurate answer with his extrapolation, I hope. But that's the problem which we're trying to address. And this text is not exactly the same, which we discussed in the last APNIC meeting. So I'm not going to bore you with all the text. Text is here. You can read it. This is where all the confusion was in the last time we presented it, because Secretariat wasn't comfortable with the stages and how we jump in and jump out of the stage. So we have clarified that text and we have put it in this format. Stage 1, where we are right now, is when we have more than 900,000 IPv4 addresses. We are not calculating on the basis of /24 because APNIC actually calculates on the basis of IPv4 individual addresses as per their graph mentioned in the link. So the delegation size will be, if approved from today, /23 plus a /24, additional /24. Stage 2, once we go less than 900,000 addresses and more than or equal to 256,000 IPv4 addresses, the delegation size will go back to the current state, which is /23. Stage 3 says that the moment you leave 256,000 IPv4 addresses and still less than 190,000 IPv4 addresses, the delegation size will further drop to /24. And if you remember, there is a policy, APNIC 127, section 5.1.1, there is a /16 reserved block for the rainy days. Once we reach stage 4, what we are proposing that the reserve block should be added to the available pool, and the delegation size will still remain /24. And if you read the bottom line, whenever the next threshold is met, for example, today we are in a stage 1, and there are 7 or 10 applications, let's say 10 applications in the queue right now. But when APNIC secretary or the hostmaster were allocating it to the first applicant, the number of available IPv4 addresses dropped from 900,000 to 899,000 something. This is where the stage 2 hits. But all those 10 applicants who applied, when they were all in stage 1, they will still get the V4 allocation as per stage 1 allocation, because every application is timed. So you know when someone applied, so the date and time is absolutely recorded. So they should all be getting as per the previous stage delegation size. And this is so on and so forth. For example, if you are in stage 2 or somehow miraculously APNIC recovered a big V4 address block, which once they bring that block in, they they go back to a stage 1 stage, then whoever received IPv4 delegation as per stage 2 now eligible for an extra v4 address, and so on and so forth. So this is the more clarified version of our previous policy, hence the new version. So this is all we have, nothing else. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. One of the disadvantage was discussed in the past was it will add a lot of /24s into the global routing table. Yes, which I calculated roughly around 1.2 to 1.5% additional percent increase in the global routing table, but the current growth rate is around 7%. So it's not a drop in the ocean, but probably a jug full of water in the ocean, but still not comparable to what is happening. So this is the only disadvantage. I don't see any other disadvantage at the moment, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask. So chairs, I only took 5 minutes.
Okay, thanks. After, if there any comment or question, you can raise your hand or type your question in the chat room. Because this proposal will not go through the process of a consensus today. You know, it's a good opportunity to get some feedback to encourage further discussion on the mailing list. So AFTA has made some modification for this proposal in this version. So is there any questions? So it's very clear.
Question from Mars-san is the stage step irreversible? Which stage? Mars-san, can you clarify? I didn't get your question.
Oh, thanks. This is Yoshinobu Matsuzaki. Just wanted to clarify, if we get some return address in your pool, then it exceeds for example, 900,000 in stage 2, then are we able to get them another /24?
Yes. If we move back, if we recover address spaces, and there are, for example, enough address space to give it to 5 people, for example, 5/24 can be allocated with additional addresses, but you receive 10 applicants, so it is according to whoever applied first. That's it. So it's exactly the queue. I mean, the queue is maintained today. If APNIC run out of IP addresses today, if they run out of IP4 addresses, whoever applied first will get it. Whoever applied at the later stage won't get it. So yes, if you applied for it, but by the time your application went to the host master, the address block again reduced to the backstage, then of course you will not be able to get it.
But in that case, do applicant need to claim that they need another for example, another /24, or is it automatic?
It's not automatic.
assigned?
You have to claim. It is. Everybody has to claim. It is not automatic. Otherwise, I understand the concern. I mean, how do people gonna know that whether they are eligible or not? And it might add an additional effort on the side of the host masters. But if they can come up with the mechanism, if you received a /23 today and there are available addresses available, then it should be available. It should be visible on the My APNIC portal that you are eligible to receive more. If you move to stage 2, then that availability should move away from there. So that is that if that can be implemented, yes. Otherwise, it has to be you have to ask APNIC whether they are eligible or not.
Okay, thanks your answer. And there's Suman has raise your hand, and he has a question. Suman, please.
Yeah, thank you, Aftab. Aftab, just my question is that those actually got /23 for last few years. Is there any option for them to claim another /24, or is it just only for the
everyone? That is clearly mentioned in the proposed checks. I mean, I didn't mention it here, but yes, everyone who received /23 will be eligible for a /24. And we ran some numbers because it was 2019 February when there was 2020 February when the moratorium was on /23. So since then, how many people have got /23 only, and even some of them only got a /24, so they're now eligible for a /23. So there are around 3,000 odd /24 which we have to allocate to those who only receive a /23 in the past. So I ran it from all the way from 2020 up till last month. So that was a rough calculation. Though they all should be eligible. Anyone who received, because we are raising the minimum delegation size to 768 IPv4 addresses. So if you have a /23, then you are eligible for another /24 at whatever stage you got it. So Vivek, your question, I understand your question, but we are not separating separating a reserved versus available address spaces because you do not, APNIC doesn't mention that how long a reserved space, a recovered space will remain in a reserved space. There is no policy. It is up to the Secretariat. They can keep it in there for a month. They can keep it for 2 months. They can keep it for 1 day. So there is no defined policy. Unless there is a defined policy mentioned in any of the APNIC number document, then please share it with us so that we can update the proposal. Reserved plus available is one bucket of the V4 address pool.
Okay. There's a question from Vivek. If /16 is returned during stage 2, it will be reserved for a period of time before it's made available for delegation. So we may hit stage 3 or 4 before those IP can be dedicated.
So that's what I was trying to respond to. Our delegation rate today is 145 per month. If you're putting a /16 in the reserve pool for that long, for probably for 6 months, that you move from stage 3 to stage 4, then I think we need to ask more strong questions that why it's remain in reserve pool for that long. So I don't think so that it will change the growth rate from 145 to 500 or something. Even with that rate, I don't think so that you will hit stage 3 all of a sudden or stage 4 all of a sudden.
Okay, thanks, FTAC. And if there is no other question, we thanks FTAC this presentation. It's time. You have a question?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
Wouldn't it be easier, especially on the Secretariat side, if the thing was to move from one stage to another and then stay there? Like when you from stage 1 to stage 2, and then there's no more going back to stage 1, because it could change on a daily basis if we're turning around 900,000. Someone is given a /23 and a /24, then it goes below 900,000. Someone give it back. I'm thinking of the complexity of implementing this policy.
Batra, it's a very valid point, and we, or from the author side, we strongly believe that if the Secretariat is suggesting, which you have suggested, then I think there is no harm in doing it, because if they think it will reduce their efforts, because it is, if we go with back and forth stages, yes, it is a massive effort. If you go with stage one and then two and never come back to stage one, then it's much simpler. But it is again, then you have to make sure that you have to allocate everyone a /24 by default. Otherwise, those who will not apply will be left out. Or you have to give them a message saying, well, you have to apply by this date, otherwise you will not be able to apply. So something like that.
Yeah. I have many more questions, but at last we are arriving. We've passed the time delay. Sunny wants to say something. I guess it's about going on a tea break. Sunny, please.
Not yet. Not yet, but I see Gonglian also got a question there, but I just want to respond to Aftab's comment there. Aftab, sorry, we didn't had a chance to look at your proposal yet, but we will analyze it and we will provide our assessment on your proposal later on. I'm sure this will come back to the OPM again in future, so we will provide our assessment. So I just want to clarify that. But if the chairs want to take the Gonglian's question, he posted it in the chat, please. Thank you.
Gonglian, your point is very valid. If what Bertrand is suggesting, if we go ahead with this one, then absolutely no. But what I mentioned, that if you go ahead with the proposed proposed text, then you might have to maintain a wait list. But that waitlist should not be a public waitlist. It should be just for in the My APNIC portal. It is. I mean, I'm not concerned if how many people are in the waitlist. So yes, there are certain workload in this proposal. So and we are not going to the consensus. This is what we agreed with the chairs. That this is a chance to have an interactive discussion with the community, and Secretariat can go back and have a good look at the content of the proposal and provide us the detail that what are the missing pieces from their point of view. We are happy to change it.
Thanks, Aftab. We will do that. Do you want us to look at the proposal before the next conference or next month?
I mean, I would say don't wait, because conference to conference is just I mean, you never know what is going to happen. It's sure. I mean, now the floods are in Sydney, so you never know.
Yeah, no, we'll assess it and we'll provide our comments as soon as possible. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aftab. So I guess now it's time for a coffee break. Don't forget to be there for the next session, OPM2, where we will have the 3 proposals to discuss. And I'll see you at the next session. Thank you.
Thanks, Bertrand. I'd just like to remind everyone that the link for the next session is the same link. So if you wish to stay in this room, please do. Or if you want to take a break and come back, because we have about 30 plus minutes break there. So you can come and rejoin, but it will be the same link.
Thank you. See you later.
Hi, Bertrand. We are ready to start the session.
Okay, welcome again to the people that were there on the OPM 1, and welcome to the ones that are joining us for the OPM 2. Well, Shayla is already sharing her screen, so I will give her the mic. Now we have to talk about 3 different proposals. Shayla, you're on.
Okay, can you hear me?
It's not very loud, but we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Can you increase the volume of your mic?
Increased in the maximum level.
That's
Is
better.
it clear? Is it clear? Like I'm speaking loudly right now. Let me share. Just a minute. I need to share. I closed my presentation accidentally.
Shaila, maybe you need to speak a bit louder, Shaila. We can't hear you, please.
Is it clear?
Yeah, that's a bit better. Thanks.
That's better, right? Okay. Let me share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes, but not in the presentation mode though. Yeah, now it is. Thanks.
Good.
Is it now? Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Policy SIG Administration, our second session. We already have finished our first session a few minutes earlier. And I will be going through the quick administration steps, which you can see in the presentation slides. What is Policy SIG Charter? The Policy SIG Charter is to develop policies which relate to the management and use of internet number resources within the Asia Pacific region. And this include policies for resource allocation, recovery, transfer, and for resource registration within WHOIS and reverse DNS, APRICOT, related to the services. APNIC 52 proposal, there was a proposal 137, which didn't reach the consensus in APNIC 52 OPM. So we had to, the chairs, we had to send it back to the author and to the community so that they can discuss and resubmit it. But we didn't receive the updated version within the deadline. And we also didn't notice enough interest in the mailing list. So we had to, with the chairs, we had to decide to abandon this proposal. Earlier this OPM, we have conducted a policy proposal webinar on 17th February. We have received an overwhelming response from the community. And the authors have shared their proposals to the community, and they have received good feedbacks. And we have observed a good engagement from the community. So we are very much interested to conduct this kind of webinar in the future. You already have, some of us already have gone through the OPM meeting in first session. Those who haven't joined, just a quick overlook here. Already the speakers, they have presented it, and there was one proposal 141, which is not up for the consensus, but have discussed by the author to the community. And there are some policy implementation report presented by Sani and SIG administration by another co-chair, Ching. And also, like what happened with address, it was presented in 2021, it was presented by Jiv. And in this session, in this OPM session, I'm presenting the SIG administration, and the policy analysis will be presented by Sani. And we have 3 proposals this time, which we received before the deadline. So this proposal will be presented by the authors, And then we run the consensus call to the community for their comment and for their opinion regarding these proposals. And these are the steps to implement the any policy. The initial thing is you have to subscribe to the SIG policy mailing list, and in that SIG policy mailing list you have to submit a proposal which you are willing to submit. And in that mailing list, the community members, they will discuss, they will provide their views on that mailing list. And after the discussion, we will bring it to the policy SIG, and we will make it up for the consensus. And there will be a comment period after the policy SIG meeting. It will be there will be another consensus from the members in the meeting, and there will be a comment period open for the community to comment. And afterward, we will get the EC endorsement, and also we will get some time for editorial comment period. And when everything goes perfectly, like in positive favor, we will the APNIC secretariat will implement the policy. It will take maybe less time or more time, depends on the proposal, like how much complicated it is or how much it's going to change the current policy. And the consensus decision making, I just want to make clear one thing, that consensus call is not voting. It's like it's a thing that we want the community to express that what opinion they have regarding this policy. Like they might have a neutral opinion, or they might strongly oppose, or they might minor objection, like minor objection, major objection, and they might strongly agree. So if you have minor objection, like there could be some problems which may occur during the proposal, like you can come and discuss with the community. And if you have any major objection, you will have to explain that why you are opposing this proposal. So we can consider the fact for this proposal before getting the final consensus. So participants, we expect from the participant to work together to resolve any objection. And here is the code of conduct. The URL you can see in the presentation slide. You can go to the website and read about it. And gauging consensus. This time we are running both Confer and Zoom polls, and also we have considered always considered the mailing list discussion. And also you can write in the chat box, you can raise your hand, and you can ask anything, any question regarding those proposal right after read out every proposal when the authors read it in next session, in next phase. And Zoom polls and Confer polls are enabled after each proposal is presented and discussed, and polls will pop up in your screen. And once the consensus is closed, poll result will be displayed to all. But be mindful that it will be open for any comment through the mailing list for next few weeks. I also need to remind you that RIR, ICANN, and PTI Secretariat staff do not participate in the consensus. And Confer, to use Confer, you have to be registered conference attendee, and all registered conference attendee can access without creating a separate Confer account. If you have already logged into joined OPM, you can simply click on the Confer link to access it to participate in the proposal to for consensus decision. Here is the link, it's mentioned. And these are the reference which you can go through, so that you can, if you are not very much familiar with the policy, APNIC policy and the SIG policy, how it works, then you can go all through the reference link. These are like APNIC policy development process, SIG guidelines, mailing list, and mailing list subscription and archive. You can go through it and you will know more about it. So that was my administration presentation. Over to you, Ching. Barton, over to you.
Thank you. Now we are to call the author of Prop 142 Unified Transfer Policies text. Rita, are you with us?
Sorry, Bertrand, it's my presentation before the proposals go for discussion.
Sorry, yep, sorry about that. Please.
Thank you. Yeah, I know we changed the agenda quite late bit after we published, but yeah, thanks, Bertrand, and hello, everyone. Once again, thanks for joining the Policy SIG OPM2. So this is a secretariat analysis. So I'm going to present both review and assessment of the proposals. And myself and my colleague George Odagi put together this presentation, and he is right here, helping me out with the Zoom operations. So let me quickly go through in the essence of time. I'll just skip through a few slides because each proposal have to get at least 20 minutes of time for their discussion. And we only have 60-minute session. So the scope of the review, is policy development process, document itself, the guidelines, and the APNIC policy document. The way we review it is we look at the members' feedback and operational comments coming from my colleagues in the services team, member services team, and any concerns or feedbacks expressed by the community at the OPM or at the standalone sessions that Policy SIG runs. And we also look at the comparison between the current practice and the proposals or inputs that provided by the community as well. And why do we do that? It really significantly reduces the maintenance of the overhead of the document, and I'll show you how it did with the previous reviews. And it increased the accessibility, readability, and ease of use as well, and removes any duplicate content in the policy document or other documents. And it's easier for analysis as well for you. It helps for you to easily look at the various policies in the document and analyze them and put forward new proposals or amendments to the proposed policies. And also, it's easier for us to maintain a change log. We do maintain a change log, and it's found on the website. Just where you look at the policy document, right there you can see the change log as well. And the output of reviews is sometimes it could be just minor cleanup of typos, incorrect links or sections renumbering. But sometimes we also look at the consistent of the use of language and terms, and I put some examples here. Currently in the document, we refer to assignment, allocation, delegation, and when it comes to the holders, we look at we refer to them as organizations, LIRs, account holders, resource holders, members, etc., etc. So this is a living document. We continuously review it, not periodically, but we continuously look at it and provide our suggestions to the community. So any observation that comes through this review process and any operational concerns as well. And this is all to improve the document structure, again, to ease of use and analysis by you. So in a way, it does help put forward some proposals as well, and it did. At APNIC 52, we had a number of proposals that came through based on the report that we did and the recommendations of the report. So we had 2 reviews done, and there was a long gap between the 2 reviews, 2015 and 2021. Before the 2015 review was done, there were individual policy documents for each resource type. But during that, when we completed the 2015 review process, the community agreed to merge all those various different individual policy documents into one document. So currently, when you access the policy document, you see everything in one place, and it's all divided into parts. And there are proposals now in this OPM to even further enhance this, further improve this document structure as well. And we always continuously review and continuously provide improvements, anything that we come across through these OPMs at APNIC conferences or otherwise. So we identified a new observation for this OPM as part of this analysis, and thanks my colleagues in the member services team for sharing this with us into the policy team. We noticed an increase in customer AS assignments over the period of time from 2016 to 2021, especially if you look at 2020 and 2021, that's a big jump. And we also then started looking at who is requesting these customer assignments. And we noticed that, most of them are, some of them are non-ISP type, like data centers, hosting providers. They're requesting these AS numbers for their members or their customers. And it could be that, because there is no additional fee for requesting AS number, as such, maybe some other RIRs, they do charge a fee, but in APNIC region, if you're a member and you can come and request AS numbers for your customers at any time. It could be that, they're value adding the service that they're providing to their customers, and maybe it could be that they're leasing these AS numbers to their customers and charging a nominal fee. So with us, with some of the things that we noticed through the request processes, and we just wanted to let the community know that we made this observation, and it's for the community to discuss further on this if you need, and also we can provide any additional data if you require from the Secretariat. Now I'll go through quickly the impact assessment of the proposal that will be discussed, those three proposals after my presentation. The first one is proposal 142, version 1, unified transfer policies text. Now we understand there's two parts to this proposal as it's submitted. One is to combine all the transfer policies into one part. Currently, they're all listed under different resource types. But the second one is the proposal also says that to maintain a public log of all transfers. Now, currently, we only maintain a public log of intra and inter-RIR IPv4 transfers, not all transfers. For example, transfers including historical IP addresses, the movement of them, and the merger and acquisition and takeovers. So that's not included in the public log currently, but we see that in the proposal that was added on. And we seek the clarification from the authors, and they will be presenting it in a while. We also recommended that, and as you can see the image on the right there, there's individual resource type, the transfer policies listed under individual resource types, and the part 5, which will be the new part added to the policy document. Our recommendation is that, we will do our best, and we noted in the policy text, proposal text, that the intention of the proposal is not to change the current policies, and we noted that. As we highlighted different color coding there, we will do our best without changing any policy text to merge all the sections into one part and remove any duplication if there is any duplication. So that's our recommendation. So what this means is the proposal itself is okay, but if you trust the Secretariat do the good job, then we will not rely on the text provided in the proposal, but we will rely on the current policy document, and then we will merge the sections as required. And this implementation of this proposal will be completed in 3 months. However, if the second part of the proposal, which is publishing all logs of transfers, is also reached consensus in this OPM, then that might take at least 6 months' time for us, because that requires some system changes. So the implementation will be around 6 months' time. The second proposal, proposal 143 version 2, ASN to customers, we understand that the proposal is adding additional terms in terms of the operational concerns that we highlighted in the report, and also the current practices as well. So it's straightforward, and the implementation, if it reaches consensus, will be in 3 months' time. The third one, proposal 144 version 2, reserve pool under experimental allocation policy. We understand that this proposal is suggesting to reserve an IPv4 block /21 for any future requests coming through this policy to delegate from that block. And at the same time, we also noted that the proposal also changing the wording for the membership fee. And this is very much in line with our membership fee schedule. So that's a straight change from the text was quite old in the policy. And we're going to align the text with the current membership schedule. So that's straightforward. But however, it is not very clear from the proposal that what will happen after the 5 years expiry of this reserved block. Will the policy continue to exist or deprecate? So that's not clear from the proposal. We also made some recommendations, and this is again from observations and our delegations that we made in the last 5 years. The proposal is suggesting to reserve a /21 IPv4 block. But if you look at the data that we provided to the authors and to the community from 2017 to 2021, we have delegated 6 /24s under this experimental allocation request. And maybe this data may help you with your discussions, today or later on the mailing list when it goes back to the mailing list. This proposal, if reaches consensus, does require some changes. Well, we have to reserve a block, right? So, but hopefully we will implement it in 3 months' time. I'm happy to take any questions. Otherwise, we can go to the proposals, and happy to take questions later on as well. Thanks, Chase.
Thank you, Sunny. Any questions or comments on Sunny's presentation? If not, I will ask Amrita to present Prop 142, Unified Transfer Policies.
Hi, Bertrand, would I have access to share my presentation, or would you do it from your end? Because I do not see access being provided yet.
Amrita is co-host.
Yeah.
One second, Amrita, sorry for that. We'll make you co-host and you should be able to share your slides.
Thank you, Sunny.
Thank you.
Yeah, you should be able to.
Thanks. Just give me a moment. I hope it is visible to all of you. Hi, everyone. My name is Amrita. I would be presenting the proposal, which was Prop 142. Sunny referred to it. It is on Unified Transfer Policies text. But I also need to mention that Jordi did most of the legwork. I just supported him on it. So what this is all about. So currently, if you look at the transfer policies of the different IP resources, they are listed under different sections of the policy document based on the resource types. So the policy, actually, the objective of this policy change is to bring all the existing transfer policies under one section, suggesting minor rewording or rephrasing of the text so that it is more concise, it is more simpler and easier to read for the community. It avoids and removes duplication, and it makes much more easier for anyone to refer to them. So in different RIRs, the issue is some have unified text, but in some there are separate. So it is not feasible to discuss much on it. I'll not go into the proposal in depth. You must be having it in chat, and you may have gone through it, but typically there are two things which this proposal is suggesting. That is putting all the transfer policies under one section. And it also suggests that the logs be published of all transfers. So if we look at it, ideally, it has no disadvantages. It makes the document more concise. Having the log published makes the transfer process more transparent. And I think that's what RIRs want to achieve, the accountability and transparency. In terms of impact, there is no impact on resource holders. It rather simplifies the process. And I just forgot to add that it makes the logs would make the process more transparent. And I think Secretariat had come up with a few questions. It would have been good if, the question, Sunny had shared the observation after each proposal, but I see Jordy's hand. I think he wants to share more, and I will take you to the proposal. I think you can see it here in case you have any questions, but Jordy, over to you.
Thanks, Amrita. I just want to stress something that Sunny already mentioned, is about trusting the Secretariat on the final implementation of the text. I think that's clear. Our intent was to provide a starting point with the proposal. It's true that initially we didn't thought about the logs. We understood that the logs should be transparent for any kind of proposals, and this is the way that all the other RIRs have. So the Secretariat decided, let's make two consensus calls, one for the, let's say, summarization of the text in a new section 5. Again, our proposal is just the basis of the text. The Secretariat can make editorial changes to make it more clear or to make it shorter or whatever. We could have made the text much shorter, but then it was a little bit more difficult to read, to understand. So we went to a middle point. And I think that's clear from our point, just to stress that we have two different consensus calls, one for the summarization of all the proposals, transfer proposals or transfer policy text into a single section, and the other one, the logs. I really believe, and I understand that Amrita is with me on this, that all the logs should be clear because registry should be perfectly transparent. There is no sense that some kind of transfers are not publicly registered. And I think that was just something left without intent when the different proposals for transfers were submitted. So I don't think anyone has had initially the purpose to hide some of the transfers. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordy. You made it even clearer than it was before, which is very good. Does anyone has any questions or comment on Prop 142? If not, we are going to call for consensus. Can Secretariat activate Confer and Zoom poll, please?
How do you want to do this, Bertrand? We can do it, but do you want to do, like Jody suggested there, two consensus calls for part A and part B of the proposal, or just one?
Two consensus call is going to be much better, I think.
All right. So we'll go with part A first.
Yes, please.
It should be popping up soon on the screens. The confer is up.
Confer is up, yep.
And the poll as well.
Okay. So please express your opinion on this policy. I remind you that this is not a vote. It's just an expression of an opinion. You already closed the confer?
It's closed.
Okay, thank you. Oh God, less than 43%. We'll take a few seconds to discuss between the chairs to get if we reach consensus or not. And congratulations to Amrita and Jordi. Your proposal has reached consensus at the open policy meeting. So now we will be going with Ching Hang for Prop 143.
Sorry, Bertrand, Bertrand,
Yes.
sorry, Sunny, we only did the part A, we didn't do the part B. The part B is to publish all the logs.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the change at the last, sorry, my bad. So that's just a 50% of the prop that passed. So now we're calling for consensus on the second part of the prop. Did you open it already?
Yeah, it's open, Bertrand.
Yes. Okay. Cast your opinions, please.
Wow.
Twenty seconds left. And it's done. We'll get back to you in a few seconds. And so to conclude this Prop 142, the second part has reached consensus as well. Thank you to Amrita and Jordi, and bravo. And for the second proposal, I'll give the mic to Ching Hang.
Okay, thanks for Chen. So we go to the next proposal, 143 ASN to customers, present by Jordi. Jordi, you are ready. You can share your screen to make the presentation.
Thank you. You should be having my screen already.
Yes.
Okay, so ASN to customer, this is proposal 143. is version 2 because we did a previous version and there were some text rewording suggested by the Secretariat, and we shortened it a little bit, the proposal. So that's the basic changes. The proposal has been co-authored also by Anupam. Let me explain the problem. We know, sorry, I skipped 2 slides, this one. The section 12.4 allows an LIR to provide ASN to customers. However, when the customer ceases to receive connectivity or becomes a direct customer of APNIC or NIR or from another provider, is not obvious if he can transfer that ASN. These generate problems in several situations. For example, what happens if the original LIR goes to bankruptcy? The customers cannot anymore use those ASNs. Or what happens if the customer becomes a direct member of APNIC or an NIR? Or if it changes the provider of the connectivity. We should make clear that ASNs are not a scarce resource, so that should not be a problem. We also understand that in terms of conservation, we need to return ASNs when they are not used. That's obvious as well. However, it does not make sense that an ASN that has been assigned to a customer needs to be returned if the business situation changed, but the network is still connected to internet and willing to use the same ASN. It's clear that the initial criteria for obtaining the ASN was already fulfilled, so that's not a change according to the policy rules. And this is especially relevant when organizations do the transition to IPv6, as they may have been customers from several upstream providers and not have IPv4 allocations, but they may need IPv6 PI, which will be directly assigned by APNIC or the relevant NIR, and consequently, they will need to keep an ASN. Somehow, this should not be considered as a transfer. It's in fact administratively a transfer, but it should not be considered as a transfer in the sense that the customer is already using the ASN. Okay, so it looks like a bit contradictory, but I think it's very clear. Administratively, from the registration point of view, is a transfer, but in fact, the same customer will be using that ASN. So what is the objective of the policy change? Well, simplify the process, that's it, and recognize that in certain cases, this is very, very important. What is the situation in other regions? Well, some don't have explicit rules, neither restrictions on those cases, and in some others is more clear, but they have transfer policies for ASN that fulfill the same objective of the proposal. So now, what is the proposed text? As you can see on the left of the slide, you have the actual text that have 4 points. So we are just adding one new point. And I discovered when doing the slides that there was a mistake because a word was repeated. So I strike that word. I hope that the Secretariat can understand that that's a duplication, and if the proposal reach consensus, they can correct it at the implementation time. Now, what we are doing here is say that in addition to the existing conditions for the transfers, we will have a text that say, alternatively, the same ASN could be registered via transfer to another APNIC or NIR member, upstream provider connecting that customer, or directly by the customer in cases when they become an APNIC NIR member and receive the ASN via transfer. So simple, okay? So we just recognize something that it's very obvious, but it's not evident in the existing text. Advantages of the proposal: fulfilling the objective that we have described before, and avoids original ASN users to reconfigure devices and provide the stability of the stats for the ASNs. Because if we enforce the customer to get a new ASN, his traffic in global stats will change the ASN, so it's sometimes more difficult to observe that traffic or that behavior of the behavior of that network. Disadvantages, I already mentioned it. It may be perceived as a transfer, and administratively, it's a transfer, but actually it's not, because the customer, the user of the ASN is still the same that originally was assigned to. And with that, I am done. Questions?
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Jordi's presentation. This proposal is proposed by Jordi and Anupa, and the purpose of this proposal is to avoid ASN change in certain cases. And this proposal changed the current policy at 20.4 to ASN to customer to increase the number of fields item. Is there any questions or comments? And Jordi, could you share the screen on the slide to show the number fields item?
Let me share the screen again.
Okay.
Here is any specific slide?
To make sure the sentence and the item.
Yeah.
Yes. So everyone can see the sentence, the fifth item. So is there any comment right now?
Yeah, Ching, this is Anupam. I have raised my hand.
Yeah, there is a question. I hope this is only possible when LIR and NIR is ready to allow such transfer.
Yes, of course, because the transfer requires the, let's say, authorization of both parts. Okay, so if the original LIR does not allow it, we cannot enforce that. But in that case, if he don't justify the need, he may need to return the ASN to APNIC. So I don't think that that's going to happen. So if you lose a customer or the customer want to become a direct member of APNIC, you should allow him. Otherwise, why you keep an ISN that you are not using? Okay, but that's something that we are not changing with this proposal. This is already in the existing policies.
Okay, thanks, Jordi's explanation. And yes, Anupa. Yes.
So this is just to reiterate the point before we move to the consensus that this is a use case which has to be considered by the community because this is a possibility where the upstream provider needs to be changed by the resource holder, in this case the ASN holder, and that should be allowed without returning it back to APNIC because the network is still running. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I am not sure to understand if it was a question or.
So Jordi,
Yes,
this
no.
is just to reiterate your point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any question or comments or suggestion? You can type your question in the chat room. Our speaker will respond it. If there is no other question, so we will make the room poll and the confirm enable, and the poll will pop up on your screen, and we will leave some time for the poll and the confirm. the poll.
It's coming up now. Yeah.
Okay. So we leave 20 minutes, 20 seconds. Okay, so we give us some times for the discussion chairs. Okay, so after the discussion with chairs, where congratulations, Jody's presentation, proposal 143 have reached consensus. Thanks, Jody and Aruna. So we
thank you all.
Thanks. So the time return to Bertrand.
But to unmute first before I speak. So now that Prop 143 did it reach consensus? It did. So this policy proposal has been discussed in the APNIC policy mailing list and today at the OPM. And PDP required the community to reach consensus or a general agreement on the proposal before it can proceed. After we've conferred with the other chairs, we've noted that the community for and against the adoption of this proposal reach a consensus, and the proposal has been the consensus has been reached on this proposal. I would like to thank the authors and thank all participants for considering this and coming to a decision. Thank you all. And we will now go with Shayla for Prop 144 initially. Shayla?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, it's a bit low.
Okay. Our next presenter, he will present proposal 144, reserve pool under experimental allocation policy. And this will be presented by Anupam Agarwal. Please share your screen and explain it to the attendees.
Thanks, Zaila. Is my screen visible?
Yes, clearly visible.
Okay, so thank you everyone for being there. This proposal, my co-authors are Amrita Chaudhary and Simon from Bangladesh. So the context of this proposal is an operational concern which was raised by the Secretariat that whether or not allocation should be done from the last /8 which is available. So this was discussed in the working group, and what we could see very clearly that the experimental policy as it exists within the Internet Resource Policy as part of Section 5.7 is a very forward-looking policy. It just not restrict itself to just allocation. It specifies that what is the purpose of the allocation. It goes on to state that why the allocation should be done and what is the duration of the allocation. So this overall, this policy is perfectly in shape. And the problem which is currently there, that because IPv4 resources are getting depleted, how to ensure that this experimental dimension which was captured within the current policy continues to be there, and people who are willing to experiment with IPv4 in next few years do get some amount of resources to continue with the experimentation. So with that intent, and that is the primarily intent which is also specified within section 5.7.1.1 of the current policy. Now to move ahead, the version 1 of the proposal, this is version 2, the group felt that we will have to have some kind of reservation. So the objective of this policy change is to reserve certain amount of resources, particularly IPv4 resources, so that whenever there is a need by the community to get some resources, they do get that quite easily. When we looked at the similar situation in other regions, we find that most of the regions except RIPE do have an experimental allocation policy, but they don't have definitely any kind of reservation. So the proposed policy solution is that we reserve /21 for experimental purposes. From version 1 to version 2, what has changed is that in the version 1, we were talking about /19, and in version 2, after the discussions in the working group, we have reached that /21 should be a good enough number of IP addresses which can be reserved for quite some time. So then the discussion was primarily on the time period till which the reservation is going to be there. On that, we have proposed that the reservation continues to be there for next 5 years. And then a small change in terms of section 5.7.5, where the words IP resources fees, application fee can be replaced with the words assessment of members annual fee. The Secretariat has already agreed that this is a valid change. The community needs now to decide whether we can move ahead with the reservation of this policy. As part of this, the Secretariat also raised a question that what happens after the end of 5 years. As far as we can recollect, that the discussion was that it will be reviewed again at the end of 5 years, and a decision whether or not to deprecate the entire policy we can look after the end of the mentioned 5 years. The other concern which was raised by Secretariat was that currently whenever they are making any allocation, they are possibly giving some memorable addresses which is easier for people to remember while doing their experiments. But the choice now here is that whether or not you do get a resource and whether or not you can memorize that resource easily. So the idea is that as long as there is something which is there, possibly it will be easier for people to get the resource and continue with the objective of experimentation. The advantages is that it will ensure continuity with the research dimension. There are no perceived disadvantages of this proposal, and there is no impact on resource holders, as this is a reservation request from the existing resources. So that is all I have to present. If there are any comments or questions.
To the community, is there any question for Anupam ji for this proposal? I can see one comment from Rajesh Jain. /21 is low. It should be /19. For an example, 20/23 or 24 pools. It's one comment. And another comment is from Jordi. Another comment is from Jordi. I can see the reality is all the RIRs have an experimental allocation policy. None has a reserved pool. And Amrita ji, she's writing that this was discussed. Is there any question?
Shaila, there is a question from Aftab to the
Okay.
Secretariat.
I can't see it.
It's okay, I can read it.
Yeah, please.
It's for the
It's
Secretariat.
Okay.
You did 5 delegations in 5 years. How many came back? And what was the average time they were in use? I hope my colleagues from the services team could answer that one, please. Is Gonglian online? Could you allow him to speak, please?
Yes, Sunny, can you hear me?
Yes, Gonglian. Thanks, Gonglian.
Yes, we have those delegations in the last few years, but at the moment they haven't returned yet. Some of them, they still need to do more experimental, continue in the service, and other is just recently they not even reached 1 year yet. It is possible will be returned if they finish the experimental, but some of them they just in the last few months, recently delegated.
Thanks, Gonglian.
Thanks. I can see some raised hands. Jordi, you want to go?
Yes, thank you. I want to say that I believe /21 is good enough because you must not expect an experiment to last for 5 years. So if there have been 5 or 6 allocations in 5 years, and those allocations typically should be like /24 or /23, I don't think they should last for more than 1 year. So there should be some limitation in that sense as well. I support this proposal. I am not sharing the concern of the Secretariat about the 5 years termination. I think it's clear with the policy text, and maybe it requires some editorial changes when implementing it, if it reaches consensus, that after 5 years, no more allocations will be allowed because the policy will die. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordi. Rajesh Jain, you want to say something?
Sorry.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Thank you very much. Yes, while I support the proposal, but let us remember that during this pandemic, the importance of broadband has gone up. There are various new things are emerging, and a lot of experiments will have to be done. And APNIC has got about, I think, more than 56 economies, and there could be multiple experiments which are required to be done for the specific economies. So I still support that it should be more than 21, more like /19, but I do support the proposal. Thank you.
Thanks. Gaurav, you want to say something?
Yeah. So thank you. So I was just going through the APNIC IP pools available with APNIC and the allocation speed with which APNIC is allocating the pool. What I figured out was the current allocation pool or the current IP v4 addresses which APNIC have with this current speed will last for more than 5-7 years. So I strongly support this policy. What I want to add is maybe we can think of having a separate pool allocated or reserved for this experimental purposes, so that we can allocate the IPs for all experiment from that specific pool instead of having a multiple pools. Because because currently, what I am thinking, we are not going to APNIC IPs will not going to finish in next 5 to 7 years. So without reserving some specific pool, I don't think this policy will help us in any other sense. Please correct me if I'm wrong here.
Thank you. Amrita Didya, you want to say something?
Yes, thank you. Just to respond to what Mr. Jain mentioned and Gaurav mentioned, two things. Mr. Jain, when we were discussing it initially, the allocation which we thought for experimental purpose was much higher, but then we had a call within the community, and based on that, we had this, I would say, compromise or consensus that let's go in with this, because we were looking at the track of the past, and we thought let's go with this. If there is some, unexpected requirements for experiments coming up, that could obviously be renewed. That is, that looking at the trend, that's not how it is. And secondly, Gaurav, to respond to it, this is only for experimental allocations we are talking, and this policy is only for experimental allocation, which APNIC would keep aside. So I think it addresses your issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Amrita Didi. I think APNIC Secretariat has something to say about it. Sunny, please.
Thank you, Shaila. Just rereading the proposal again. And I know Jody said that, this proposal will, after 5 years, will deprecate, but I don't see that in the text of the proposed solution in the proposal. I can share it here in the screen. Everyone can read it, but it's not clear from the proposal that after 5 years, this experimental policy, allocation policy for IPv4 will deprecate. I don't see it clearly. So.
Yes, Sunny, it's not there. That's for sure. But it is an obvious thing. If it is required, we can add that line that after 5 years, the proposal expires. And if required, if the community at that point of time thinks that there needs to be more deliberation for experimental allocations, they can, relook at it. That's just a line perhaps that could be added. But it was presumed that that's how it is going to be.
All right. Thanks for clarifying, Amrita. So that will take another 6 months if a new version has to be submitted. But I'll leave it to the chairs. If consensus has to be taken on that point as well, please, when you're calling for consensus on the proposal.
We actually have another raised hand. Rupinder Singh, please go on.
And Shaila, I also want to come in here after this comment.
Okay, sure. Rupinder? I think he left. Anupamji, please continue.
Yes, Sunny, from the author standpoint, when we were discussing this, it was very clear to us that we are looking for the reservation for next 5 years, but the policy itself will deprecate. That was not the idea. After 5 years, whether the policy needs to be deprecated or the reservation itself is not required, that has to be discussed at the end of 5 years. So I hope this clarifies.
That clarifies very well, Anupam. But I do notice that now there's a mix of comments coming through this discussion, and we are actually running out of time. We have to allow everyone to join the other session, which starts after the break. So I'll leave it to the chairs how they want to do this. Thanks.
Give us a few seconds. I will discuss with my co-chairs and head back to here quickly.
Yeah, the question would be what happened to the proposal? Because it says this reservation will expire 5 years after the policy implementation. So if the policy is about reserving /21 and that expires, then there's no point keeping the policy. But that's Rupina is back online. While we discuss, Rupina can have please go ahead.
Singh, we will take our last comment. Yeah.
Yes. What I wanted to check was how many requests for such experimental allocations have come to APNIC till now, and how many are allocations have been made?
Over to you, Sunny.
Bertrand actually showing with hand. 5 delegations we have made, Rupinder Singh.
And they are for how much period? Is there a time limit to them?
As per the policy, there is a limit for 1 year period.
For 1 year period. Okay. Okay. So that solves my query. Thanks.
So we will call for the consensus now. The Confer and Zoom pool screen will pop up. Secretary, please run the Confer and Zoom poll.
Yep, it's coming up. Zoom poll is up now, and the Confer should be coming up soon as well. There you go. Thank you.
We'll continue for another 10 seconds, and Barton, it's over to you.
Oops. So we will discuss with the other chairs and see what we come up with. I'll get back to you in a few seconds. Sorry, it takes a bit long. It would have been much easier if people had expressed all their concerns on the mailing list. Ask you for a few more seconds. Okay. This policy proposal has been discussed on the APNIC policy SIG mailing list, not so much, alas. And at today's open policy meeting, the APNIC policy development process requires the community to reach consensus on a general agreement on the proposal before it can proceed. I've conferred with my fellow chairs, and we've noted that there are community comments for and against the adoption of this proposal. In consideration, we believe the community has reached consensus on this proposal. And as for all the proposals that have reached consensus today, the next step in the policy development process is to take these proposals to the AGMMM and seek continued consensus there. The proposals will then be posted back to the mailing list for a comment period. And I would like to thank the authors of this proposal and all the participants for considering this and coming to a decision. Thank you all. So what's the verdict? The verdict is it consensus. This session is reaching the end. Sorry, we ran a bit late. And because most of us have another meeting in a minute, I will now end the session and thank you all for joining. And see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.